What happens when a black man breaks down on a quiet highway and ends up the target of a roadside mockery by two laughing cops? He stays calm, says just a few words. Then the most powerful office in the country calls. What follows leaves everyone speechless. Before we begin the story, write in the comments where you are watching us from. If you've ever driven a '96 Chevy Impala held together by more hope than bolts, you know one thing. When she starts coughing, you better listen. That's exactly what Trayvon Green was doing. Listening. Hood popped open, steam whispering into the cool night air, hands deep in the belly of the engine, working his usual magic. Just 20 minutes earlier, he'd been helping a woman change her tire in the Walmart parking lot. Older lady, maybe late 60s, kids grown and gone. No one else offered. Trayvon did. That's who he was. Quiet, helpful, the kind of man who stayed late after work just because somebody needed him. But kindness doesn't give you armor. It was close to midnight. I-84 practically empty, except for the occasional trucker humming through. The only light was from the old Chevy's dome and the stars overhead. Trayvon was wiping his hands when he saw headlights swing around the curve behind him. Red and blue flashed like someone hit rewind on a nightmare. A cruiser, no siren, just lights and a slow crawl. He sighed. Not again. Two officers stepped out, both white, both with that look. The look that says, "We've already decided who you are." One of them, lean with a square jaw and mirrored sunglasses, at night, strolled up like he was the sheriff of the highway. "Trouble under the hood, sir," he said, but there wasn't an ounce of concern in his voice. Just syrupy sarcasm poured slow. Trayvon nodded. "Car stalled. I'm just—" "Uh-huh." The other cop cut in, circling behind him. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. Mind if we take a look?" "Suspicious activity?" Trayvon raised an eyebrow. "I'm fixing my own car." "Yeah? Got any proof it's yours?" Trayvon blinked. Proof? It was registered in his name. Insurance papers sat in the glove compartment, next to the same glove he'd been wearing since high school football. But suddenly, standing there with grease on his shirt and the wrong skin in the wrong neighborhood, nothing felt like enough. "I got my ID right here," he said, reaching slowly into his back pocket. Every move was rehearsed, palms out, no sudden gestures. He'd had the talk growing up. The taller cop laughed. "Relax, buddy," he said. "You look nervous." No kidding. They took his ID, didn't even glance at it before launching into a routine check. First his trunk, then his tool bag, then under the back seat. Trayvon tried to keep his cool, but his voice cracked when he said, "You don't have a warrant." "Oh," the short one said, grinning. "We don't need one. You're on the side of a public highway with tools and no working vehicle. Looks like potential theft." Trayvon laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Theft? Of my own car?" They didn't answer. They just kept digging, tossing his tools onto the road like junk. His wrench rolled into the grass. "You know what?" the tall one said, pulling out his phone. "Let's get a picture of this. Highway Chronicles Midnight Mechanic Edition." He aimed the camera at Trayvon, who was still standing there, jaw tight, fists clenched at his sides. That's when the shift happened, not in them, but in him. Trayvon wasn't loud, never had been. But in that moment, something broke open. It wasn't rage, it was exhaustion. Tired of being polite to people who didn't see him. Tired of swallowing his voice so they wouldn't choke on it. He looked the officer dead in the eye and said, "Do what you want. Just know somebody's watching." The cop smirked. "Who?" Your guardian angel? No, Trayvon replied, pulling out his phone. My lawyer, and she don't sleep. That got their attention. For a second, they froze. Then the smirk returned, meaner this time. Smart mouth, one said. Let's see if that helps when you're sitting in the back seat. But before they could touch him, a distant engine growled up the road. A truck slowed, headlights sweeping across the scene. A voice from the window. Y'all good out here? It was a trucker, old school southern drawl. Big rig rumbled behind him. Move along, sir, the cop barked. But Trayvon looked up, locking eyes with the trucker. The man hesitated, snapped a photo. That's all it took. A flash, a tiny act of witnessing. One of the officers cursed under his breath. Great, now we're on TikTok. Trayvon didn't say a word, just picked up his wrench from the grass. His hand shook, not from fear, but from the restraint it took not to scream. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this turned. If you've never felt what it's like to be invisible in plain sight, try standing on the side of a highway while two grown men in uniform dig through your things like you're a stray dog and they're looking for fleas. That's where Trayvon was, elbows cold from the breeze, fingers still oily from fixing his car, and dignity scattered all over the asphalt like the tools they kept tossing around. The shorter cop picked up Trayvon's socket wrench and turned it in his hand like it was a mystery from outer space. What's this for? Breaking windows? He said, with a smirk that could curdle milk. Trayvon squinted at him. That's for fixing my alternator, but I get it. You probably ain't used to solving things with your hands. The tall one didn't laugh this time. No more grinning. The mood had shifted. Their game wasn't landing the way they wanted. The power they were so used to wielding like a toy flashlight wasn't blinding this man the way it was supposed to. But just because the smile drops doesn't mean the danger does. The shorter cop leaned in, lower voice now. You think you're clever? We can still take you in for interfering. Don't need a reason if you're acting combative. Combative. Trayvon had heard that word before. It was their favorite catch-all when a black man dared to look them in the eye. Didn't matter if your tone was calm, your words precise. If you didn't shrink, you were a problem. He held up both hands. I'm not interfering. I'm standing. You're the ones tearing up my stuff. The tall one finally spoke again. We got a call. Said someone might be stripping cars. You fit the description. Trayvon laughed under his breath, dry and sharp. Let me guess. Black male, dark jacket, human being. That one stung. The tall cop's jaw twitched. No more playing around. Then came the switch. Their radio crackled. Static first. Then a calm voice. Unit 4-7, what's your location? The shorter cop answered. Westbound I-84, traffic stop, routine. Another pause. Then a second voice came on, different tone. No small talk. Confirm ID of civilian, full name, we're running a priority match. The tall one narrowed his eyes. Copy. Subject is Trayvon Malik Green, ID verified. The radio clicked silent. The cops stood still. One looked over at the other, uneasy now. Trayvon watched their posture shift, the air tighten. The power started leaking out of their vests like air from a busted tire. What's going on? The shorter one asked. The taller cop didn't answer. His eyes were scanning the road behind Trayvon. That's when another vehicle pulled up, a sleek black SUV, windows tinted, no sirens, no badges. But it wasn't local. The plates were federal. The SUV didn't stop completely. just slowed enough for the window to roll down. A woman's voice, crisp and direct, called out, "Officers, please stand down." There's been a development. They froze like someone hit pause on a remote. She didn't wait for permission. The SUV idled forward and parked behind the cruiser. Out stepped a woman in a dark blazer, heels clicking like she owned the pavement. She walked straight toward Trayvon. "You're Mr. Green?" she asked, checking a tablet. He nodded, unsure whether to speak. "I'm here on behalf of an office monitoring emergency alerts from law enforcement. A video was just uploaded. You've been flagged for federal attention." The shorter cop finally spoke. "Wait, what video?" "This is a misunderstanding. We were just..." "Just what?" she cut in. Her voice could slice steel. "Just humiliating a citizen on the side of a road for fixing his own vehicle." The officers looked at each other like kids caught in the kitchen with cookie crumbs all over their faces. She turned to Trayvon. "Are you all right, sir?" He wasn't. Not really. But he nodded anyway. The streetlight overhead buzzed, as if even the electricity was holding its breath. More headlights appeared, this time. Not a trucker, not a stranger, news van. Someone had called the local affiliate, or maybe the video had spread that fast. The woman handed Trayvon a card. "You'll be contacted by someone from the legal department in the morning. You won't need to speak with these officers again." She turned back to the cops. "You are now subject to internal review. Your dashcam footage has been pulled. A formal statement will be requested within 12 hours. I suggest you begin preparing it." The cop stood still. No more smirks, no more buddy. Just two men in two big shoes who finally understood that sometimes respect doesn't ask politely, it arrives uninvited and parks where it wants. Trayvon didn't move for a long second. Then he bent down and picked up the last of his tools. One by one, slow, careful, deliberate. Like each socket and ratchet was a piece of his soul they tried to scatter. He walked back to his car, tried the key. Still dead. This is the moment. Everything you waited for is right here. Stay tuned to see how Trayvon flips the script. Trayvon sat on the edge of his Chevy's hood, elbows on knees, hands hanging low like he was wringing the last bit of patience out of them. The wind had settled, but something heavier than the breeze still filled the air. A kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but sharp, like the pause before thunder. The two cops stood by their cruiser, whispering fast, trying to piece together a story that didn't sound like what just happened. No more flashlights, no more fake concern. Just stiff backs, tight jaws, and the weight of eyes watching them. Because now they knew someone was watching. Across the highway, folks had started pulling over. Not a crowd, not yet, but a couple cars with hazard lights blinking. One woman, still in scrubs, leaned on her hood filming with her phone. A man in a church suit stood nearby with his arms crossed, eyes locked on the officers like he'd seen this scene too many times before and wasn't in the mood for reruns. Then it happened. The short cop's radio let out a double click, someone signaling in. He grabbed it fast. "Unit 47, go ahead," he said, voice tight like a stretched shoelace. The voice on the other end was low, measured, and way too calm for what followed. "This is the Office of Federal Liaison Oversight. Effective immediately, both officers are suspended from duty pending review." The cop blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard correctly. Stand down. Do not engage further. You are to remain on site until contacted by federal personnel." The taller officer stepped back from the vehicle like it had just caught fire. "This some kind of joke?" he asked the sky, as if the clouds might send an answer. But this was no joke. This was accountability knocking, and it had the right address. Trayvon stood, not with fanfare, no swagger. Just a man who'd been quiet too long and had finally been heard without raising his voice. He looked around and noticed the woman from the SUV, now joined by two more people in matching windbreakers with official badges clipped to their belts. They weren't here to chat. They were here to document. One of them, a tall black man with salt in his beard and sharp eyes, approached Trayvon with a notepad. "Mr. Green, I need your statement for the file. But first, let me say, you handled yourself with more grace than most would in your shoes. And trust me, we see it all." Trayvon nodded. He wasn't trying to be graceful. He was just tired of folding. As he spoke, recounting the way the officers had mocked him, dumped his tools, twisted the story, the crowd across the highway grew. Not loud, not angry, just present. They didn't chant, they didn't cheer, they just watched. That kind of silence, it's not empty. It's full of understanding. When Trayvon finished his statement, the older official nodded and handed him a copy. "You'll be contacted regarding next steps. In the meantime, we've arranged for your car to be towed free of charge. There's a repair shop in town we've worked with before. Good people." He almost said thank you, but something stopped him. Gratitude didn't feel right for something that should have never happened in the first place. Instead, he said, "I appreciate someone finally showing up with sense." As the tow truck pulled in, the two officers were quietly moved aside. No cuffs, no dramatic escort. Just silence and side eyes from the people now standing on the gravel shoulder. Their authority had slipped out from under them like a rug yanked by truth. Trayvon gathered his tools, carefully this time, like each one had earned its place back. His badge from work had dirt on it. He wiped it clean with his shirt sleeve and clipped it back onto his jacket pocket where it belonged. The driver of the tow truck, a younger brother with a calm face, looked at him and nodded. "You need a ride?" Trayvon glanced once more at the road, then at the cruiser, then at the crowd. "No," he said finally. "I'm going to walk a little." "Sure?" "Yeah, I need the air." So he walked. Not far. Just enough to feel the wind again. Just enough to know he was still here, still breathing, still whole. And then, like it was scripted, like the universe was watching with popcorn in hand, the woman in the blazer got a phone call. She stepped away, answered, listened for a moment, then turned toward the officers. Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard. "That was the White House. They've been briefed." Nobody moved. Not the cops. Not the crowd. Not even Trayvon. Because when a man gets mocked for fixing his own car on his own time in his own country, and it ends with a phone call from the most powerful address in America, that's not just justice. That's a shift. A small one, maybe. But it counted. And tonight, so did he.